Okay, so your testament Aleph, let's quickly go through the Mishnah and then we'll get into this piece of Gemara. So it says the Mishnah, Kovers Meso, Shlosh Yomim Lekodem Aregel. And once again, here's the segue into Hilchos Avelis, because that's about burial before the Yantif. If you bury 3 days before Yantif, Botlam Menogzera Shiva, then Shiva is nullified, and which seems to imply that you have to have at least 3 days of Avelis. Shmona, if you bury the mace 8 days before the regel, before the yantif, which means you now have passed the shiva period into the shloshim period, but le'menag zera shloshim, then the shloshim is cut off by the yantif itself. And I think we pointed out last time briefly, you'll see as machlokas, does shiva really end in the 7th day like we do it? Or there are opinions here that says it really ends at the end of the 7th. Even if you got up on the 7th, if you didn't have to sit the full 7th, the 7th is still the day of Shiva. So in order to kind of be into the Shloshim period, you have to start already the 8th day. Right.
But this does mean if you had 1 day, let's say, of Shloshim, the whole rest of the Shloshim is cancelled.
Correct. Yes. Now, Mibnei Shamra, because they said Shabbos Ola, being a Masechet Shabbos is part of the 7-day cycle of Shiva, and we gave a number of reasons for that. We said we pointed out 2 basic reasons. One is you can never have a cycle of Shiva without having a Shabbos, and second of all, that even on the period of even on Shabbos is what's called Dvarim Shebetzina. Private things, intimate things are still prohibited. Tashmish Amita, relations, are still prohibited on the week of Shiva, even on Shabbos. You can't do things overtly, but things that are not overt, such as intimacy, is still prohibited. On the other hand, and therefore Shabbos is Ola Vena Mafseket, does not stop the Avelis. And Regalim Mafsikim Venam Olim. And Yontif, on the other hand, stops the Avelis, whatever level you're at, Venam Olim, but is not considered part of the Shiva itself, which would mean, so for example, if you only had, according to what the Mishnah's opinion, that you have to have 3 days of Avelis, if you only had 2 days of Avelis before Yontif, so then you would have to continue 5 days of Avelis after Yontif. That's what the implication would be. Okay, so regel mafsikin veinam olim. Okay,
that's not the way we paskin.
That's correct. We paskin that any minimal amount wouldn't be enough to stop it. Correct.
Don't we have the rule mitzakto hayom kula? I think it
correct. Is. Correct. We have a rule, and we even have a rule that afilu shach, even 1 hour is considered enough to be mavatal. Okay, that's how we paskin, and that's based upon the conclusion of the Gemara. Okay. So on the other hand, what would be important, I think I said this last time, I'll just say it quickly, that if you did not do anything before the Yontif, you did not do any of the Nehugi Avelos, then the Yontif can't stop the Shiva. Cannot.
You're saying
in other words, you have to start Shiva. Shiva doesn't happen by itself. You have to do something that shows you're sitting Shiva, such as sit on the ground, such as take your shoes off. And if you did not do that, and somehow you came in right away, the funeral was over, and then the sun went down, and you didn't do anything, so actually Shiva would not start until after Yontif. Okay, so I said many times you can see this either of Yontif, or you see it sometimes of Shabbos, even where they'll have Avelim sit on the ground, or pull out a stool in the cemetery, if the weather is reasonable, to sit down before they get back in the car. Because otherwise, if they get in the car and they get back home and then they forget to do anything for Shiva, the day didn't count. The day just was like a 0. And then, which means that the Shiva was not going to really start until Sunday. Okay. All right.
Then you'd have to do a full Shiva.
Well, it's always a full Shiva, but then you'd be actually 2 days later. That's all. Right. So Shabbos Olavim Asekes, we're going Masig Vina Olam. Rabbi Lezer says, Mishachar Beis Hamikdash Shetzeres Shabbos. When Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, so the Yontiv of Shavuos is like Shabbos, because Shavuos is really 1 day, and therefore Rabbi Lezer feels that the 1 day Yontiv of Shavuos is going to be similar to a Shabbos, and in the same way the Shabbos doesn't stop, but it continues, so this the same thing would be for Shavuos. Okay, when there was the Beis Mikdash, they actually brought karbanos for the 6 days following, and therefore the celebratory nature of Atzeros was really like a 7-day Yontif. right? We do this. We don't say Tachlin for several weeks after Shavuos. That's not such a big celebration, really. Okay. So, and Rabbi Gamliel Omer Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim K'Regalim, and then Rabbi Gamliel says that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is like a regal, which, in other words, even though they're short days, but there's maybe a certain happiness of Yom Adin and clearing our judgment. Yom Kippur is a Slicha Mechila, and therefore it's mafsikin and not olim. V'chachamim omrim lo k'divrei zeh v'lo k'divrei zeh, not like Rabbi Lezer, not Rabbi Gamliel. El atzeres k'regalim. Shavuos is like Yantif. Even today, even after Churban Abayis, which means it stops. Whatever you're doing before, it stops. If you add 3 days of Shiva or 1 day of Shiva, as we paskin, it would stop the Shiva. If you started already the Shloshim, it would stop the Shloshim. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim is like Shabbos. They're not considered like the Shalosh Regalim, and it's the opposite, right? So our halacha, by the way, is that both Atzeres, both Shavuos, and also Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is like considered like Regalim. They would stop the Avelis, and they don't count as part of the days of Shiva.
Why do we totally disregard here what the Mishnah is saying and the Chachamim, the dominant opinion?
Because there are other opinions. There are other opinions.
When we get to the Gemara, we find out who they are.
And there's one more thing. And there's actually something more important. We have a rule. Halacha kedibra mekel ba'avelis. When it comes to avelis, you always look for the easy way out.
Even today?
People, unfortunately, do not. People suddenly get very machmir when it comes to avelis. Correct. That's true. But the reality is, if you understand Chazal's approach, is that's not how they looked at it.
So we're saying all these holidays stop at period.
All these
don't
days.
Pick up again. It's
Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur will stop whatever avelis you're at.
They don't stop
and correct. And right. And also, if you right, and that would be the end of it. That's what we're seeking. Okay. So that's the introduction in the Mishnah. It says the Gemara, Amar Rav, Gzeros batlu, Yomim lo batlu. Okay. So Rav is going to say something that you're going to find very difficult. He says it means that when it says Yontif stops the Shiva, or stops, let's say, the Shloshim, it means that whatever the laws of Avelis that you couldn't do, you can now do for Yantif. However, that's the Gzeros of Batlu, the Yomim lo Batlu. But the days of the Shloshim, or the days of the Shiva, actually continue afterwards. That's what Rav is interpreting our Mishnah to mean. Okay, it's not Bui Paskin.
Batlu to him, so I'm confused.
No, Gzeros Batlu. So it says Batlu, or in this case it says Batla Himena. What's Batal? The Gzeros that you cannot do on Avelis. When you
allowed to do, you stop. In other words,
you could take a haircut, you could take a shave, right? You could wash. But it means the count did not end, and therefore we simply suspend the count.
It's like Shabbos in a way. In a way.
Correct, but no, it's mafsikim. Correct. It means, but it does. But Shabbos doesn't stop Avelis. You can't take a haircut out of Shabbos.
I agree, but
correct, but he's reflecting upon the words batlai menu, right? The regular is batal. What's batal? It says batlai menu gzeras shiva. The gzeros that you can't do is batal, which means, here's what it really means. Besides the fact that the count continues afterwards, it means that if you didn't take an advantage of getting a haircut before Yantif, right? Comes Yantif and it goes through. After Yantif, too bad, buddy. You snooze, you lose. Which is not what we say. We say, our opinion is that, of course, Batlu, the Gzeros Batlu, and the Yomim are Batlu.
I see.
The entire Shiva ends, or the entire Shloshim ends, and when you come after Yantiv, you're on to the next period. So for example, in Shiva, you'd be on to Shloshim, but if the Shloshim finish, that's it.
But if it was Rosh Hashanah here, for example, so fine, Rosh Hashanah, you celebrate the way you should celebrate Rosh Hashanah, but after those 2 days have gone by, you just continue the Shiva.
You continue the Shiva, continue the Shloshim. Right. Correct. That's how Rav interprets. That's how Rav. Once again, this is not like we understand it, right? And Rav Huna says the same thing. Zeres batlu yomim lo batlu. Rav Sheshes Amar. Rav Sheshes said afilu yomim namim batlu. Okay, when even the days themselves are batal, which means the entire thing came to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Gemara has to explain what is exactly the first opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So my time of Yomim lo batlo. What's the first opinion of Rav and Rav Huna says the Yomim are not batal? Shem lo gilech erf haregel asl galech achar regel. Because if you didn't take a haircut before Yantif, you lost the opportunity. You can't take a haircut afterwards because you go right back into the period of Shloshim. Okay? And the Gemara now proves this. It shows you that there are two opinions, right? V'hatanya in this case, many times V'hatanya is usually an opening to a question. And the Gemara V'hatanya, here Rashi points out, Rashi says a siyata. It's a support. It actually shows you that there are two opinions, and the opinions of Rav versus Rav Sheshis, Rav and Rav Huna versus Rav Sheshis are going to be ensconced in a brayso itself. Okay, which says as follows: Hakover is meso shloshim yom kodem laregel. Once again, it's working with the same assumption of the Mishnah that you need 3 days. If you buried 3 days before the Yantiv, batlei mena gezeros shiva, and shmona yomim. If you buried 8 days before kodem laregel, batlei mena gezeros shloshim.
So far,
but here the brayso expands. Umegaleach erev haregel, and you can take a haircut on the erev Yantiv because batlei mena gezeros shiva and shloshim. And lo gileach erev haregel, asla galeach achar regel. No, if you didn't do it before Yantiv, it's gone. Comes along Abba Shol, who's a Tana, and says, Abba Shol Omer, Muta legalech achar regel, shekeshem shemitzvah shlosha mevatels gzera shiva, kach mitzvah shiva mevatels gzera shloshim. The same way that the 3 days, doing 3 days, we mevatel the gzera of shiva completely. So if you finish the shiva, then you'll now get to the Yantiv, the shloshim will be ended as well. Kach mevatels gzera shloshim. Okay, so you see there are two opinions in the brayso which really dovetail or are the source of the machlokas of the Amoraim. In fact, Tosa simply points out, he says normally we have it when this normally comes up, use the term tanoi, kitanoi. It doesn't use it here, so it's not clear. But maybe it was just showing the opinion of Rav Sheshis more than the fact that there's the two opinions that are there. At any rate, this brayso is clear that there are two opinions, and what Batla Gzeres Shloshim and Gzeres Shiva really means. Now the Gemara is going to reflect upon another part of the Mishnah, and that's what I told you before. The Mishnah says, when is Shloshim going to be stopped? How many days do you have to do before Yantiv? 8. Right?
It says 8.
Correct? And now, based upon what we just read in Abba Shol, he doesn't refer to 8. He refers to Shlosha and Shiva and Shloshim. So he refers to Shiva. So Gemara says Shiva, v'hanan shmonatnan. We learned in our Mishnah Shmona, and in fact, the opening part of the brayso used that very same term. Shmoni Yomim. So what? Where the lost day? What happened to it? So the Gemara says, "Kasava Abba Shol holds, and this is what we pass like. Mikzas Hayom Kekulo, Yom Hashvi Olelo Lekan Lekan. He holds that Mikzas Yom Kekulo, part of the day is, and therefore the 7th day is a little bit of the 7th day, and no, it's not a little bit of the 8th day. It's a little bit of Shloshim, it's a little bit of Shiva, a little bit of Shloshim. It doesn't count as 2 days.
No, but it counts as the first day of the Shloshim.
Correct. So it's day number 7 going to day number 30. Okay. You don't have to count 7 full days and then 8, then start with day 8. So this is Abba Shol. So Abba Shol says 2 things. First of all, Abba Shol says that when you come to a Yontif, everything stops.
Right.
The Gzeros stop and the days stop. And Abba Shol also says you don't need 7 and 8. 7, right? If you got in part of the 7th day, you got up from Shiva in the morning, and then and then the evening is Yontif. That would conclude the Shloshim as well. You only need 7 days to conclude the Shloshim, a full 7 days. So the Gemara says, and we pass like this. Amrav Chistam Ravina Bar Shela Halacha Ka'Abba Shol. This is no halacha. So 2 halachas that we learned from this. One is Mixas Yom Kekulo, and the second halacha that we learned is, of course, that everything stops. Everything comes to a grinding halt when you come to the idea of Yontif. Okay, that's the source for our halacha. Okay, And not only that, the Gemara says, Modim Chachamim La Bashol. Chachamim actually admit to Abashol in one case. According to the Chachamim, how many days do you need to have before Shloshim would be ended? Before Shloshim would be ended by the Yantif? 8 days. You need to have 7 days and then the 8th day. So the Chachamim say there's one exception to that rule, and that is if the 8th day, which is Erev Yantif, is Shabbos. Okay, if the 8th day, right. So in such a case, so let me read it. Modim Chacham Labashol K'Shachol Shmini Shalol Liot B'Shabbos. When the 8th day is on Shabbos, K'Shachol Shmini Shalol Liot B'Erev Shabbos Ever Regel Shemuta L'Galeach B'Erev Shabbos. Then you're allowed to go back to Erev Shabbos, which is the 7th day, to take a haircut and take a shave. Okay. So in other words, even though normally the Chachamim would require you to be past the 7th day, already be into the 8th day, where it is at the 8th day of Shabbos, then you can back it up a day. Why? Because you're doing L'Kavod Shabbos as well. The case comes up in a number of cases. Okay? So,
in fact, we're saying we agree with Rabbi Shul in this particular
case, right? Because there's an additional concept of not just getting ready for Yontif, it's also getting ready for Shabbos. We have a similar kind of thing in, if I remember now, in is it Sphira, or is it the 3 weeks? 3 weeks of getting ready for Shabbos. I'm trying to remember what it is. I don't remember now. Okay. It'll come to me later. Okay. So the Gemara says, Kamanaz lahadi amarav amram amarav. Whose opinion is the following statement of Amarav going to follow? Which is as follows. Avel, Kevin she'amdu menachmi me'etzlo muta berachitza. Whose opinion, and everything we just learned until now, is the opinion of Amram, which says the moment that the Avelim get up on that 7th day, that the Avel now can go wash completely, which is a sign of having completed the Shiva. Whose opinion is that going to be? The obvious answer is Kaman Ke Abashol, because the Machlokas Chachamim and Abashol. Do you need to get into the 8th? Do you need 7 full days, or is even the partial day of the 7th day continued enough to finish off the Shiva? Okay, that's pretty clear. And Rabbi Lacha Kabashol Biyom Hashvi. And then Abai says, we just says it again. We had this before, that the halacha is like Abashol for Shiva. Umodim chachamim labashol biyom shloshim. The Amina mixes yom kikulo. And Abai comes along to say something else. So the Shabashol says on the 7th day you get up the Shiva in the middle of the day, right? For Shiva. For the Chachamim, though, admit to Abashol when? For the end of the Shloshim. In the Shloshim does not need 30 full days. So the only machlokas between the Chachamim and Abashol is going to be on the transition from Shiva to Shloshim.
Right. Unless it's Shabbos.
Right, but correct. But in other words, but according to Abaye, when it comes to the end of Shloshim, everybody says
Miksasayah, is that it?
Correct. Everybody says according to Abaye.
Right.
Rav Omar, nope. Halacha kabashol b'yom shloshim, v'yein halacha kabashol b'yom shiva. Okay, so he said no, the other way around. When it comes to shloshim, we follow like Abashol, who argues in the Chachamim. And when it comes to Shiva, we don't follow Abashol, and obviously the Chachamim argue with him. So that's exactly taking the other tack. But Nardai Omer, once again, you go back the more radical way. Halacha Kabashol, Bezu Bezu. Okay, we always follow Abashol for Shiva and Shloshim. How do you know? The Amar Shmuel. Here comes the famous rule. The Amar Shmuel Halacha Kedivra Mekel Be'avel. Okay, Bavel. So it's always follow the most makel opinion for Avelis. Okay, we're in the middle of a Yutet and Bet. Okay, and Nardoi is people, scholars from Nardoi.
Yeah.
There's groups of scholars that are mentioned simply collectively. Right? There's some names that don't appear, like Acherim. I'm trying to think where else are the names that come up. but they're
The scholars
the scholars Nardoi, right? Nardoi was one of the early yeshivos. It was later supplanted by Sur and Pumbedisa, correct? Okay, so okay, now the Gemara deals with a completely different part of Avelis here. What do we know? That there's Avelis of Shloshim. Okay, the Gemara is not asking about Shiva now. The Gemara assumes that you know. Yotet Amud, correct? Okay. Okay. So.
That's a good question.
Right. Shloshim Yom Minolan. How do you know that there's an Avelis for Shloshim Yom? Okay. How do you know Shloshim? How do you know Shivas Yomim?
Well, what did they had?
When Yaakov died, says
Aaron was 30 days.
Aaron is 30 days, correct?
But the Yosef for Yaakov.
Yaakov is Shivas Yomim.
Was it from Moshe? Because Yeshua had to go.
The Gentiles did 70 days.
Right. Was it from Moshe too?
I think so, because Yeshua was he sent Raglim to spy on Yericho, and he had to wait for 30 days. This is what it said in
Maybe it says the Medrash.
Moshe passed away.
Moshe was 30 days at Aaron, but in the case of Aaron, everybody cried for him, way
Correct.
more than for
Okay, so I don't know, but I just have to learn Yeshua. I just learning Yeshua, so that's what I know.
But
you know.
for Yaakov, it was only 7 days.
Right.
They got more firm as they went on.
All right. This doesn't have.
This
Is the old one doesn't have these things. Okay. So the Gemara says, how do you know Shloshim Yom? So it says, it's a very funny place where they learn it from. They don't actually choose it from the cases that you would normally assume it to be. Maybe it's either before Matan Torah, or they're simply stories. More likes to find a Gzer Shav or some type of limud. So, Shloshim Yom Minalan, Yalif Pera Minazir. Okay? It's a hekesh or Gzer Shava between the word Tifra'u and Gadel Pera. It's not even the same cognate of the word, and it appears once with the story of the sons of Aaron who are killed, and Hashem says Rashechem al Tifra'u.
Right.
He says to Aaron and his sons in the day of the dedication of the Mishkan, don't
let your hair go wild.
Don't let your hair go wild, which means that's normally what people would do in this period of time. During a period of Avelis, they would not actually take care of their hair. They let the hair go. They wouldn't go for a haircut. You, sons of Aaron, need to be very carefully groomed, even though you've just lost your 2 brothers. Uksiv Hasam, and it says at a Nazir, it says Gadel Pera Sa'aro Sho, that he will grow his hair on his head. And that's also Allah of a Nazir. Nazir can't take a haircut. It's one of the basic laws about a Nazir. So the same term applies for Nazir and for the sons of Aaron. What does one have to do with anything? Malahal and Shloshim, Avkan Shloshim. So the same way that a Nazir is for 30 days, so that the Nazir's hair grows for 30 days, so too the period of time where Aaron is told not to follow the laws of Avelos is for the period of those 30 days. He cannot do the normal laws of Avelis, which would be to let his hair grow long.
But you really don't get that.
Now, what you don't get. Now, how do you correct Stam Nazir? So how do you know that a Nazir is 30 days? So that's the weak link in the drasha. Okay.
Even in Aaron's, I'll be honest. To me, it was like the dedication. The mission was 7 days, right? So maybe he couldn't go wild for 7 days. Maybe that's what the Torah was saying to me. Hey, during those 7 days, you're going to have to stay proper, but I don't know where we got even 30 days.
So once again, it's this Gzera Shava Pera. Okay, it's a very funny Gzera.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, there's all kinds of questions come up. Can Novel actually comb his hair? But if he says Pera Rosha, what does that mean?
Right.
Wild hair, frizzy hair, what do you do?
It implies don't comb it or brush it or anything.
Correct, correct. And a Nazir as well can't actually use a comb. Nazir can actually brush, he can't use a comb. He's afraid to pull the hair out, which would be a prohibition. So
Nazir can use a brush though?
I think so.
He uses hands.
I'm a Nazir, I'm okay.
You're a Nazir, okay? Good. Okay.
You have a head start in the rest of them.
Right. Okay, at any rate, so how do you know this? V'hasa minalan. And how do you know that a Nazir is 30 days? Rav Masna, Stam Nazir is Shloshim Yom. A regular standard Nazir is 30 days. That doesn't really answer the question. How do you know that? How do you know that a standard Nazir? What does it mean a standard Nazir? Well, I'll read in a moment. Standard Nazir means that the person says, I want to be a Nazir. It's not for a time limit. The default is 30 days. So how do you know? How do you know that's the default? So Gemara says, my timer on Makra. The pasuk says, Kadosh Yeh. Says Kadosh Yeh Gadol Parasar Rosho. He's going to be holy. So Yeh Gematria Tlasin is 30 in Gematria. Okay, Talsin Have. Okay.
Can you imagine the rules about Velus having
hanging on a
gematria?
What happens with a T or something? You use a different verb tense, like T or something.
Right. Well, you know what it really means, I suppose, is.
I wonder when they will look into it.
So you know what somehow Chazal must have felt. You know, all these rules have a logic behind them. The 30 days, a period of time that we set things by.
Yeah, I know.
And not taking a haircut for a week is surely not going to be noticeable. Remember, in a society where everyone had a beard, where nobody shaved, not cutting your beard for a week was really not going to stand out that much. I mean, think back to what people looked like traditionally, right? So when would it stand out? 30 days is a period of time that people who wanted to become trimmed would trim. That's when it would begin to stand out.
That's a lot, right? For sure.
Right? And that's why it's where Shloshim is. So the Shloshim Yom for a Nazir seems to make sense because the key to a Nazir is not drinking and not cutting his hair. And therefore, the period of time where you're also not going to be able to cut your hair, which is one of the major parts of the Gzeros of Shloshim, would be for 30 days. Okay? All right. Seems to make sense?
Makes sense, for sure.
Right.
Whether it's justified.
Right. Now, of course, by the way, for a parent, there's not really Shloshim. For a parent, then you are for the year. Doesn't mean you have to grow your hair for the year. When do you stop? When can you get a haircut? Not necessarily. Gorimbo. When people tell you look like a bum. Now, there's actually a machlokas. What that is, it depends on how much hair you have, right? So it's not shorter than shloshim, that's for sure. But it could be shloshim, it could be shishim, it could be 45 days. But the machlokas is when they tell you that you're looking like a bum, so what does it mean after that? Does that you then revert to becoming, you can take a haircut any time, or you still need to wait until you really like the dishevel that people are going to tell you, right? So in other words, there are two opinions there. And you can argue it both ways, because once you've already broken the spell, so to speak, and taken a haircut, so then you're in the haircut situation. On the other hand, you could say, well, you took a haircut because you were over the edge. Now you go back to what it is and wait till they tell you again. Okay, I think most people in the Oheg, the way that once you took a haircut, you can take a haircut any time. Okay, so but it's surely not less than shloshim. So Kadosh Yeh, which of course looks like it's such a weak type of gematria, it's really, I think, based upon what the concept of Nazir really is. Why Stam Nazir would be set for 30 days. Certain numbers have certain meaning. 30 days is a time period for getting a haircut. Okay. Now, Amrav Huna Braid Rav Yeshua. Hakol Modim, this goes back to our Mishnah that seems to talk about the third, you need 3 days before the regel in order for the regel to stop the Shiva. We don't paskin like that, but our Mishnah is of the opinion you need 3 days. So Gemara says, Hakol Modim, Kishachol Shlishi Shelo Liot Erev Regel, Sh'aser B'Rechitza Ara Erev. That when the third day is on Erev Yontif, then you can't wash until the evening. Okay, which
just before the evening.
No, it actually seems to mean Yontif. It actually seems to mean Yontif.
It sounds like it's
right.
During
which by the way means that other things you could do before Yontif. For example, you can take a haircut before Yontif. It just seems to be that Rechitza, because I guess you could wash with cold water and you could wash parts of your body, so all of that could be done on Yontif. So therefore, there was no reason to move it up earlier until before the actual Yontif itself. Okay. So, Amar Rav Nechemia Braid Rav Yoshua, Ashkachtinhu Rav Papi Rav Papa, Diasve V'Ka'amri Halacha Krav Huna Braid Rav Yoshua. Okay, so I heard that Rav Papa said, we're sitting and they said the halacha is like this statement that you can't wash, can't do rechitz until the evening. Okay. And Ika Diamre, some say Rav Nechemia Braid Rav Yosef, Ashkechin Rav Papa Ul Rav Huna Braid Rav Shua. The Yasvi V'Kamre, they didn't say the halacha is like Rav Nechemia Braid Rav Yeshua. They actually said the halacha. Halakol Modim Shimchal Shlishi Shelo Liot Ever Regel Shasa Brachitza Ado Erev. Okay. So by the way, there's some poskim say this would apply even today, that we don't require 33 days when. We don't require 3 days, before. Whenever the yontif stops, then you really can't wash. It seems until actually yontif itself. It seems to be a very unusual type of halacha. Okay. Boimine Abaye me Rabba. Kavru beregel. Okay, this gets into cases where the burial is actually on yontif. Okay. If the burial is actually on yontif. So regel ola lo leminyan shloshim o ein regel ola lo leminyan shloshim. Okay, which means if you bury on the yontif, this happens, and of course, periodically. It's a very unusual type of halacha because you didn't do the avelus. The avelus actually doesn't begin until when? After yontif.
So do I have to change the rules in our cemetery?
What are the rules in the cemetery? We don't bury in yontif.
They only saw that one
second day.
Once I saw that, Rabbi Kuzma's mother.
Is Bechazkat onem? He's onem during Yom Tov?
No, he's Bechazkas Avel, but he's not an Avel. The Simcha overpowers it. So first of all, let's just stop for a moment. It doesn't have to be Yontif. It could be Chol Moed. Same thing. Right? So you have to change. So even we don't bury usually on Yontif, but you have a whole Chol Moed, first, second, third, fourth day.
Usually that first day Chol Moed is busy.
Yeah. So that's the perfect.
We don't bury on Yontif.
That's the case.
Why are we saying they used to bury on Yontif? Generally speaking.
So actually, they used to bury on Yontif. They probably did bury it with goyim. Yeah, they probably buried on Yontif.
Once I saw it in Toronto.
Yeah.
Rabbi Kuzma's mother buried on Yontif. It's only one time I ever saw it because it was in Bathurst Lawn, and it was in Kattan.
How did they get the
Goyim? I think Goyim did. I don't know.
It's not a question.
I just know what happened, and I never heard it before.
Goyim drive the car.
Yeah.
But there's mitzvah levaya. People go, they don't.
I don't know. I never saw it.
I just once. It's the only time. It's very rare to do it, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's very difficult to do it. Second of all, it creates more chilul Shabbos than maybe the good. And that's why we tend to discourage it. So it's only one time I remember.
I read this. It just sounds like it was,
Okay. Anyway, so think of it as Chol Moed.
I never heard of it.
Okay. Kavru beregel, regel ololo leminyan shloshim ein ol regel ololo leminyan shloshim. So do we already start the meter? Does the meter start counting from the burial on Chol Moed or Yontif or not?
Why shouldn't it? If it's burying, it's burying.
Okay, so the answer is why not? Well, let's first deal with Shiva. Leminyan Shiva lo kumi boile, lo nahaga mitzvah Shiva beregel. That Shiva, we don't do any Shiva practices on Yontif. So how could you say Shiva starts? Right? In other words, for Shiva to start, I told you have to do something for Shiva.
Right.
So we have a rule that there is no on Yontif you pretend it's Yontif. It is Yontif. So it is Yontif. So you don't do anything that breaks with the spirit of Yontif. So therefore, it's obvious that Shiva can't be considered to be started. You can't say we're counting the days, but you couldn't keep the days because it was Yontif. Because you didn't start Shiva. It's like the example I gave you, if a person is buried right before Shabbos and the family didn't sit down at all, didn't do anything, so didn't take off shoes, didn't sit down, then actually Shiva starts on Saturday night.
Right? That's really doesn't happen that way, but that's what would happen. So the same thing would be, you don't say that because you did nothing of Shiva, therefore Shiva cannot start until after Yantiv. However, Shloshim, what's the Gemara's question? Because there are prohibitions of Shiva that also are prohibited on Yantiv. Notably, you can't get a haircut. There are prohibitions of Shloshim that are also prohibited on Yantiv for different reasons. You can't get a haircut on Shloshim, during Shloshim. You can't get a haircut on Yantiv. We learned Mishnayos before about people who got out of jail who couldn't take it before. They were the exception. They could go get a haircut on Yantiv. But normally, you can't get a haircut. Why can't you get a haircut on Yantiv? Because you can't do dry cleaning on Yantiv, because you're supposed to have done all this before the Yantiv to come into Yantiv properly prepared, clothing, body, and so forth. So therefore, practically speaking, you see that there are prohibitions of Shloshim that we don't do on Yantiv, we don't do on Chol Moed. So maybe I could argue, you see that I'm doing some of the Nehugim of Shloshim already on Yantiv. So therefore, it should count for me like I did some of the Shloshim, right? Once again, the same thing as I told you, like Erev Yantiv or Erev Shabbos, where the Kfur is right before Shabbos Yantiv. They don't have to do everything. They don't have, they don't have to daven mincha. They don't have to take tehillim. They don't have to, have a sudas avrah. You have to do something that shows that you're doing shiva.
Just like taking out a portable stool and sitting on it.
Correct. They usually take off their shoes and sit on a stool. That's clearly the only people who do that, right? Mm-hmm. Are people who never chavelim. So the same thing as well. But you could argue when Shloshim comes on Yantiv, the only people who don't take haircuts and who don't wash their clothing are either people in Shloshim or people in Yantiv, which is true, or people in Chol Moed. So therefore, you could say I did some of it already. That's the question the Gemara is asking here. So who's asking this question? Abai is asking the question from Rabbi. If you started the burial on Yantiv, do you consider the days of Yantiv to start already the meter on counting Shloshim, which would create an unusual situation that Shloshim would start before Shiva has started.
Right.
Okay, it's not going to end before Shiva, would start before Shiva. So the Gemara says, "Kikame ba'ilei lemin shloshim the konahaga mitzvah shloshim b'regal." So he asked Rabbi, and what's the halacha? And Rabbi said to him, "Amalei eino ola." It doesn't count. Why does it not count? Why would it not count for the laws of shloshim? Because the reason is not because of shloshim.
Exactly.
The reason that you don't take a haircut, the reason that is that you should be prepared before. The reason that you don't take a haircut as a novel is because of Avelis. It's not that you should have done it before, because of Avelis. So the reasons are different. It happens to be they look similar, and there were some similarities in the Mishnayos before, but clearly the reason, the underlying reason is different. So you can't say, practically speaking, I didn't do it. You did Yantif. Okay. So Amar Le'ena Ola. So that's that halacha. These are all halachas that become actually very, very, very relevant. Okay, correct. Okay, next. Hakover es meso shnei yamim kodem regel. So according to our Mishnah, that you're required to bury 3 days before Yantif for the Yantif to stop. The period of Shiva. What happens if you only bury 2 days before? So the Gemara says, Mona chamisha yamim achar haregel. So look, there's a split here. You continue the Shiva 5 days afterwards. The Yantiv is mafsik, stops it, doesn't cancel it. It stops, it suspends the Shiva, and the Shiva will pick up afterwards. Umalachto nasos al yidei acherim. And you can have your work can be done by other people. And after Yantif, your work, whatever your work is done, you can't do it because you're an avel. You do it; other people can do it for you. The avada v'shivchosav osim betzina b'soch beiso, and his servants should work betzina. That once again, it shouldn't look like they're obviating the shiva period because it's a long period of time. Things have to be done.
I'm sorry, what's the restriction on the Abadah V'Shivchota? Why should they be B'tzina?
I think it means everything, any type of work that's done should be done, I guess, b'tzina, not to broadcast that work is being done. Normally, I guess everything
Even
came.
by servant?
I guess so. Yeah. Right. Normally, in the house where shiva is taking place, I think normally in the house where shiva is taking place, you can't do any work. You can't even ask other people to do work, skilled work.
They feed the Avelim, no?
That's not work. That's necessity. Let's say Let's say you have a business in your house. Okay. Let's say you're building blocks or something. Right? So you can't say someone in your house where the Oval is sitting Shiva, even if he's not doing it, someone else will do it. So the heter here is that if it waits till after Yantif, you can have it done Aidei Acherim, and the Avodim and the Shivchosav can do stuff, but they do it quietly, even though it's in his house. However, here's the exception. However, the key is the last 4 words here. The Ein Rabbi Mesaskimbo, that after Yantif, the people don't have to come and pay a Shiva call. Okay, why? Shekfar Nesasku Bo Beregel, because they had an opportunity to see him over Yantif. It wasn't really a Shiva call, but it means that you don't have to come and wait and after Yantif to come and pay another Shiva call. Ain't Rabbi Mesaskim Bo. Ain't Tzrichim L'Nachamo, because during the period of time of the 7 days of the Yantif, you had opportunities to give him the Chama, right? Even though it's Yantif, but nonetheless you had opportunities to give him the Chama. Shekfar Nesasku Bo Beregel. And the Gemara says Klal Shel Davar. Here's the rule. Klal Shel Davar Kashu Mishum Avel Regel Mafsiko. Anything that's because of Avelus, the Yantif suspends it, such as sitting Shiva. V'chol mishum iske rabim ein regel mafsiko. And anything that has to deal with the people, such as they're saying tanchumim, they're saying nichum avelim. So you don't say that becomes suspended and they have to come after Yantiv, but that itself, as the regel, doesn't stop it, but it continues. People do it on its own.
So you still say?
I guess you say Malkum Menachem Muscha.
We're only talking about cases with the 2 days in a certain sense.
Correct.
They're not sitting on those stools.
No, they're not.
This is further proof that in those days everybody lived in close proximity to one another.
Why? Because they could pay a shiva call?
Yeah, to play a shiva call on Yontif. Today it's not possible.
Oh, it's possible to the people you live near.
Okay.
You know what? Correct.
Everybody lived close to one another.
There was one shul, and they probably all sat in the same shul harmoniously. Can we believe that?
Is that a shul they don't daven in or something?
I don't know.
It's a shul they don't daven in.
Let's remember there always were 2 yeshivas in Bavel, right? They couldn't.
When you learn
Surah Bubadisa, no.
So we're saying here that it's proper, it's legitimate to be menachem Avel on Yom Tov.
It's saying
That's what it's saying.
That's what it seems to say.
How
Or
about on Shabbos? Are you allowed to be menachem?
you say Shabbos. He milizak unechama krova lavo.
Right.
It's printed in
Shabbos itself will be the Menachem,
Yeah,
right?
we say that in the Misha Berich Cholim.
Correct.
Where we kind of
But-
apologize for making the Misha Berich for Cholim on Shabbos.
But they're supposed to make bakasha.
Yeah. But that's because that's for the
I forgot. I
But
don't remember if it's in the article or not.
Isn't
So the Chama is not part of the davening, correct? But it should be somewhere. It says Shabbos Himelizik on the Chama Krova Lavo. I don't remember where this is.
It simply sounds like on Yantif, you can...
So the answer is that it's yes, you are going to see the person and wish him, whether formally or informally, some kind of nicham avelim.
Yeah. You're going to see him in shul and talk as if you
See,
were
we do it
making a shiva.
on Friday night by Kabbalah Shabbos.
Right.
We have the Avelim come in. We do Nichma.
So actually,
before Shabbos.
So actually before
Before
Shabbos.
we brought in Shabbos.
So we do it
And
incorrect.
I've always assumed that the reason we do that is because on Shabbos we
Shabbos
don't
is
want to
Shiva.
be Nichma. We don't
Correct.
want to be Menachem.
No, it's a little different. What happens is the Avelim were home, and they would come to shul on Shabbos, and it used to be they davened mincha early, and then people would come on their own. They said Shir Hashirim, and they said in many cases they said Kabbalah Shabbos, those first 6 paragraphs, they said them to themselves. They didn't have like a chazan gets up. It's not really tefillah b'tzibur. And then I guess they got together to say l'chadodi. All the stories of Ari going out into the field. The sun is still there. They're not walking in the darkness. They couldn't see the way to get back from the field. So the Avelim were not in shul. The Avelim would be ushered in at right before Shabbos. And when the way Shabbos was Mizmor Shir. So actually it appears that this took place earlier in the day, like probably a half hour before we did, as Shabbos is coming in. They'd say, Hamakom Menachem Eschem. Now we're finishing off your period of Shiva, now you're coming into Shul on Shabbos. It's not like us today that the Ovel is there for Mincha, then they send them out. And by the way, the reason they send them out is because he has no reason to be there, right? It's Mizmorim of Tillim. He doesn't really say Tillim. And it's not really tefillah, so what is it? So that's why he goes out. But we do it a little bit too late in the day for us to be doing it properly. Really, because we're saying, by the time we get to Mizmor Shir, by the time we get to the Mizmor, except in the summer, by the time we got to the Mizmor Shir, the sun has been down probably ready for 20 minutes. 15 minutes, it's already dark.
As you said, they daven early, then
But
Shabbos comes in at 9 o'clock. They daven at 6, 7.
Well, they probably started davening maybe 20 minutes before we start davening. It doesn't have to be so early. It means you're ushering in the Avel. You're ushering in the Avel when Shabbos starts.
But it's still not appropriate, right, to be Menachem Avel on
Correct.
Yom Tov
Sounds
or on
like
Shabbos?
it is. Sounds like it is.
No, because
It says.
The Gemara
Shekvar, these guys go both
on Yom Tov you do that.
I know, but the halacha, or what we do today, practice we don't. I think.
Well, you could be right. There are lots of things we don't do, and they said we could do or didn't do. Maybe they did it differently. Something they did differently in those days.
Maybe that's also lakula, right? The lenient approach is not to say Menachem Avel on Yom Tov.
I think you're right. They all lived together in each other's house. Obviously, they said something to the poor guy sitting there or whatever. He's an uncle. They knew everybody who died. They were all together, man. It wasn't just walking or driving on Shabbos. They were all there all the time. Everybody was in and out of all those places all the time. It's not like you have your own house. It's all locked. Back and forth.
They can throw out the neighborhood.
No, but even on the Allah, it's not good. Eruv. We all had a courtyard.
So that would be
They all had single houses.
So he quotes here from Rav Moshe. He says, Rav Moshe says, if you look in the poskim, except for the rush, this halacha is not brought down. That after Yontif, you don't have ein mesaski mimo. And Rav Moshe says the reason is because exactly what you're all saying is that our minhag is we don't give nichem avelim on Yontif. And if we don't give nichem avelim on Yontif, so when you're going to do it, so you give nichem avelim after the Yontif, like the regular days of Avelis. And that's how Rav Moshe Feinstein tries to say this. This may have been a time when they did, and today we don't. So therefore, our halacha is a little different in terms of what we do. Okay. Right. There's right. So that's that. There's also birchas avelim that it's found in benching that no one really does anymore. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So, yeah. Yeah. Comes up.
Yes, it is benching in a house for morning. Yes. It's an
It's an article somewhere. Right. So that may be that also what it means that after Yontif you don't say that birchas avelim in the benching. Okay. Okay, but you're right. It seems to be in loggerheads with the fact that we don't give nichem avelim and yantif in general. Correct? We all feel uncomfortable. We're all feeling comfortable, right? You see an oval for the first time. What do you say to them on Shabbos and yantif? Right? Oh.
I don't know. What do you say to them?
Say good Shabbos. Say regularly good Shabbos, good yantif. Okay, we'll probably all say yes, and I'm feel sorry.
You look at him in a way that
Well, you can say, you feel sorry. You can't give it now.
No, but that is when you say something. I'm sorry for your loss. That is nichem avelim.
Of course. That's
good Shabbos. That's it.
Right. No, you say if you don't say anything, because then you put your foot in your mouth. Okay. All right. Now, but the halacha that the separation they're making is between avelus and sorach rabim, the saskul rabim. Okay. Correct. Okay. Okay, that's about if you bury the person less than 3 days.
Right.
Cover shloshim yamim b'sofa regel. If you buried him 3 days before the end of Yantif, and by the way, I think the Rishonim said it's lav dafka. Tosa says it's lav dafka 3 days. It means just on Yantiv itself. Mona shiva achar haregel.
Sorry, what's it?
The first case was you buried him 2 days before. 2 days before.
Right. This was current.
Right now he's in the middle of the Yantif.
Middle of Yantif.
Cover. I'm sorry, I got back. Here. The next one is you buried 3 days before. Cover shloshim yamim. If you buried besof haregel.
What is besof haregel? I'm saying original Mishnah talked about kodem haregel, right? Here they're talking about besof haregel.
So it means what I said before. 3 days before the end of the Yantif.
What happened? 3 days before the end of the
Yantif. On the 6th day of Pesach, you buried this guy.
Right.
Well, let's say in Eretz Yisrael, the 5th day of Pesach. 5, 6, 7.
Right.
So then what happens? So after Yantif is over, you're really starting Shiva. However, based upon what we said before, that Avelus is one thing and Nesaskebo Rabim is something else.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Rabim already had an opportunity to see this guy for 3 days and wish him Nichum, so therefore you only really have to pay Shiva call for 4 days. So that's the case. I'm sorry. Covered shlosh yamim b'sof regel. Mona shiva. You count shiva after achar regel, after yantif, of which you're sitting for shiva, but arba yamim rishonim rabbi misaskin bo. Shlosh yamim achronim ein rabbi misaskin bo. So for the first 4 days, people have to pay a shiva call. For the last 3 days, you don't have to go because shekfar nisaskin bo rabbim. You already saw the guy on the regel bar regel.
So they used up 3 days during the regel and 4 days after. Right.
And then the Gemara says "V'regel olelo," and the end of this brisa says the regel counts as part of the count, right? The shloshim or the something or other. So the Gemara is using this now as a question because we had said before that the shloshim is not when Abai asked Rabbah, he said shloshim is not part of
the regel.
The regel is not part of the shloshim. Right. So here the brisa says the regel olelo regel is counted.
Right.
So Gemara says my lava seifa. Does this not refer to the last line where we said that when you bury on Yantif 3 days before the end of Yantif, the regel is considered part of the count, and you see therefore that the regel is considered counting in the shloshim, which is against what Rabbi answered. So Gemara says nope, lo aresha refers to the first part where you were buried before,
right.
And in such a case you started already counting the period of shloshim and shiva, and therefore if it's already considered counting of it, let me just make sure I get this correct. So if you already started counting Avelus, then the continuation of the days continues. But if you buried on Yantif, the days do not continue. So that's how we answer the question that we're trying to answer. The whole reason they brought this long brisa was to try to ask a question on Rabbah, who seemed to say that if you buried on a regel, the shloshim is not counted, And here it says the shloshim is counted. It's not referring to burial on a regel. It's referring to the first case, the reisha, which was burying 2 days before the regel. Okay. Another question. Eisvei. Regel ola lo laminyan shloshim. The yantiv is considered counting part of shloshim. Ketzad. Karbo b'tchilas regel mona shiva. If you buried at the beginning of the yantiv, you count shiva achar regel. Umlachnu nasas aidei acherim. Okay, similar like before. Your work's done by others. If you bury it at the beginning of the yontif, people don't have to come to pay shiva. And here there's only one case, and it says v'regel olalo, that the regel is considered part of the shloshim. What's this case? This brisa we just brought. Only one case is mentioned where you buried a person on the beginning of the yontif, and you had 7 days of yontif, and then the halacha is you sit for 7 days, people don't have to visit you, and it says v'regel olalo, the regel counts. So Gemara says, boom, you're right, tiyufta. It's a tiyufta, and therefore Rabba's response that the yontif is not considered part of the shloshim is knocked off. And Yontiv is considered part of the Shloshim, and that's how we consider it. Okay. So therefore, the Yontiv is considered always part of Shloshim, whether or not you started or you didn't start it.
Right, or in the middle or wherever.
The middle or the beginning. But the fact that the burial took place, the Shloshim is already going to be considered. The meter is already going. Okay.
Good.
Got time for maybe one little piece.
2 more lines. Yeah.
2 more lines. Okay. Kiyasav Rabin or Rav Yochanan feel a cover. I'm sorry. Kiyasav Rabin or Rav Yochanan I feel a cover beregel. Yeah, he says even if he buried in Yontif, the shloshim is already considered counting. V'chein oilo Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Padas brei I feel a cover beregel. Okay. Sure. So then it's considered it's just counted on you counted up for the shloshim itself. Okay. Okay, maybe we'll stop here. Okay.
That's not what we do today, though, right?
Shloshim. Yes, it is.
No. But the
Shloshim counts.
But I thought that the count stops.
The count, okay, but this is the case we buried on the yontif.
Oh, on the yontif. Sorry.
So not only that, but the 8th day, right? How does this go now? If it's Shmini Atzeres, I'm saying Shmini Atzeres counts as a full 7 days. So you get a bonus.
He told you,
right?
Yeah. And the second day of Shavuos?
And other Yom Tovim, the second day of Yontif, or the last day of Yontif, the second day of Shavuos, the last day of Pesach, that's already considered the first day of Avelus Shiva. Right? The case is you buried on Yontif.
The first day is Yontif.
Any day Yontif, right? So when does the actual Shiva begin? After Yontif. However, the first day starts on our last day of Yontif.
So you get like a bonus day.
You lose a day, correct? Or you've gained a day, depending how you go.
Yeah.
Right. So when you start, you get up after when Yontif is over. You're already starting at the second day of Avelus, even though you haven't done any Nehugei Avelus. But that's not because you didn't want to do it, but because Chazal made a Gzeira for Yontif Shein Shel Golias, and therefore you were precluded from doing it, so it counts it as if you had done it.
Right. So it's like you get an extra day that you don't have to sit.
But if the burial took place 2 days before Yontif, then there's no more Shiva, and the Shloshim counts from?
And the Shloshim counts at that point, and it counts all the way through the Yontif.
Right.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
The issue specifically where it's burial on Yontif itself. Okay, we'll stop here.